it sounded like the Vikings thought Jones was coming back, but then they just got the sense right at the end that he was really not convicted about coming back to Minnesota. Ended up taking a little bit less in terms of guaranteed money from the Colts.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Wisdom Wednesday. We're getting lots of wisdom from my guy, Tom Pelissero. Let's dive right into it today. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
Well, I had a chance to go on his show, or at least his show for a few days, the Rich Eisen show, when I was in LA last month. So I appreciate him returning the favor, coming on my show. He's really one of the best NFL insiders, writers, whatever you want to call him. He's one of the best out there, has been a long time. It's been really fun to watch his career flourish. His name's Tom Pelissero. He's on the NFL Insider show. You check him out on social media, at Tom Pelissero. Tom, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. Really appreciate it.
That was quite the intro. Hopefully this next little bit will live up to that, but I appreciate it, Ross. Good to see you, man.
So, yeah, likewise. So I want to start with the Vikings because that's the team. I mean, you still live up there. I think you're from there, and that's the team you covered for how long?
I mean, over 20 years, going back to my very first job at KFAN Radio in 2003, covering the Mike Tice Vikings. So, yeah, it's been definitely been a long time, and obviously, grew up watching them here as well.
So tell me what kind of their current thought process is at the quarterback position, because it's interesting. It sounded like they wanted to keep Darnold, but not that bad. They wanted to keep Daniel Jones, but not that bad. But then they don't want Aaron Rodgers, and it looks like it's J.J. McCarthy time. I'm just curious if you can kind of walk through your understanding of them trying to keep those two guys on the roster last year, but not wanting to bring in Rodgers.
Well, this was an evolving type of a thing, Ross, because you go back to last season, and I personally believe, and I said it many times, I thought Sam Darnold was going to be the starting quarterback, at least for the beginning of the season, just to give J.J. McCarthy time. But then McCarthy tears his meniscus in the preseason opener, ends up undergoing season-ending surgery, doesn't come back. We rode then from that point forward the Sam Darnold train of, here was a guy who was in there on a one-year, $10 million contract, very much a bridge or, high-end backup type of deal. He's playing well, and the team's winning. And at some point there, it became, okay, they might have to keep this guy. Then they kept winning so much and he was playing at such a high level that it was almost like this guy's now pricing himself out on what the Vikings can possibly pay. And then I think everybody knows what happened those last couple of games. He played really badly in Week 18 against Detroit. And then the wild card game against the Rams, it was just a total team effort. The entire thing just wasn't good enough that day. So they did make an offer to Sam Darnold. My understanding is it was a one-year offer again. And I thought that there was a chance that was going to be able to get it done with Sam Darnold. But, all these are interconnected parts when you're talking about NFL quarterback jobs because, at that point, the Seahawks were still making an offer to Geno Smith that was in line with what he ended up getting with the Raiders. Geno was offended by what Seattle offered him, and Seattle went, well, hang on a second. We got Sam Darnold, who right now doesn't have like some skyrocketing offer. We can get a third-round pick and get a guy who's 10 years younger coming off a Pro Bowl season. We'll go ahead and do that for Sam Darnold. So at that point, the Vikings understood Darnold moving on. Then that brought us to Daniel Jones. That was really plan B. But with Daniel Jones, went back and forth because he did have the Colts involved in the process. It sounded like the Vikings thought Jones was coming back, but then they just got the sense right at the end that he was really not convicted about coming back to Minnesota. Ended up taking a little bit less in terms of guaranteed money from the Colts to end up in Indianapolis. When you're Kevin O'Connell and you're Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, you've basically formed this type of system and environment in which any quarterback coming in has played well. And so we think we can get, do different things. If you don't want to be here, we're not going to hold you. So they pulled the offer to Daniel Jones. He goes to the Colts, and that brought into play the entire Aaron Rodgers discussion, which I think, and I've said this before, it was overplayed from the standpoint that it was always a long shot in Minnesota. Kevin O'Connell and Aaron Rodgers have known each other for 15 years. They go way back. They talk on a regular basis. And when Aaron Rodgers calls and says, hey, I'd love to come there, for 1 year and play, you don't entirely know maybe what you have with the rookie. Like, if you're willing to have me, I'll come. You'd be negligent in your duties not to at least have that conversation. But the conclusion that they came to, and this was communicated to Aaron Rodgers, was that they just want to see this thing through with J.J. McCarthy. In other words, as much as Aaron Rodgers, you can argue this, right, both ways, because Rodgers hasn't played at a really high level since 2021, but you saw flashes even last season as he got a little more distance from the Achilles. Even if you argue Aaron Rodgers gives them a better chance to win in 2025, what type of ripple effect does that have on your plan in 2026 and 27? They invested in J.J. McCarthy. They trade up to number 10 to get him. He's hit all the medical checkpoints here in terms of the spring, and so they're going full force behind J.J. McCarthy. Unless something catastrophic happens here with McCarthy, full anticipation he's going to be the Vikings quarterback in 2025.
And what's so interesting about that is they wanted to see it through with McCarthy instead of Aaron Rodgers, but not necessarily if Darnold and Daniel Jones came back. That's the part I think is interesting. I didn't get a chance to tell you this, Tom, when I was out there, but Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah was at Princeton when I was there.
Right, yeah.
And, he was not on the football team, right? And was not on the basketball team either. So I asked somebody that was at Princeton when we were there, I'm like, where'd this guy come from? That he wasn't like a football or basketball player, and now he's the GM of the Vikings. I'm like, I don't remember him. I don't know him. And the response I got back was, he knows and remembers you. And I was like, uh-oh. And the story goes, Tom, that evidently in an intramural basketball game, I may have elbowed Kwesi pretty hard. So what happens is, right, I'm 295 pounds, right? So when you're going against normal students, they think that like they watch like the NBA and Shaq, right? Like they think they can like body you up and like lean into you. Yeah. And I'll allow that like a couple times down the court. But like the third time, I'm like, no, I don't feel like doing this. Bam. So evidently, my lesson there is don't elbow a guy that might become one of the 32 NFL GMs.
So that brings me to a story of my own, which I have told in the past, but my memory, similar type of thing, was being at Boston College, and Doug Flutie's like the biggest legend, right, in BC football history. Well, he was still coming back in the off season, and he would come and play rec ball, down at the Recplex.
He loved it.
He would generally play with a bunch of the women's basketball players. So there's one, Friday morning, we've been out all night on Thursday, I'm sure, with my buddies at the Kinvara or whatever the bar was. And so like we kind of drag ourselves into the gym at 9:00. Like we're playing pretty well. We're running game. We win a few games. And all of a sudden, I hear somebody go, hey, we got next. And it's Flutie. So Flutie comes out there with the women's basketball players. He's doing all sorts of ridiculous stuff, throwing alley-oops to himself off the backboard. He had just signed a new deal with the Chargers at that time. And my buddy Feeney, who's just not that coordinated, was guarding him. And I'm like, he's going to hurt Flutie. Like, he's all over him, like a rug on him. And I'm just like, all right, let's switch off. So I switch on to Flutie. We're up late in the game, like 10-9, playing to 11, And somebody takes a shot from the perimeter, hits the back of the iron, goes really high. Well, I mistime my jump, thinking it's going to come off hard. I land on Flutie's right shoulder. So I can kind of feel him give me a little look. Ball comes back out. Another shot goes up. I start to jump. Flutie elbows me as hard as he can, right in the ribs, and I go stumbling off, dry heaving onto the baseline. Could not return to the game. We lost 12-10. I told this story on Good Morning Football like a year ago. Our bookers on the Insiders then got Flutie to come on, watch the clip, and react. He said he did not specifically remember that instant, but he goes, but that absolutely sounds like something that would have happened. So I believe my recollection was pretty strong on that. He loved to come down there and ball man, which when you're a 20, 21-year-old college student playing against a pro athlete is pretty fun.
So that's so funny because I don't remember that at all either. But I would also tell you, like, that happened a number of times where I would get annoyed with a regular student
Yeah.
bodying me up, and I'd be like, I'm not doing this. I don't feel like letting you like push me. Like, we're not doing this. Um, I want to talk to you, Tom. I know you talked about it elsewhere. I think it's a really interesting discussion. You got a lot of attention with you pretty much do every year. You have an unbelievable article that you come out with a couple days before the draft, usually, where you do a deep dive. I mean, deep on all of the quarterbacks. I love it. It's got the pros and cons of really every guy. I don't know why this year people chose to just be infatuated with the one con on Shedeur Sanders. And it brought up this whole conversation of anonymous sources. And I don't know, it seemed like more of the venom went to the assistant coach that you obviously have a relationship with and told you the truth, his truth at least. I don't know. Did you get some venom too, as well as a result of even publishing it? And just kind of your thoughts. Because the thing, I saw your one clip. I think it's comical that people think that that affects their draft stock. That like
Right.
that one story that you write.
Well, I think there's a bunch of different things here at play, Ross, which is, yeah, I've written that story since back out when I was at USA Today, and I feel like every year I become more thorough. I talk to more people, dozens of coaches, front office people, GMs, area scouts, position coaches, OCs, like everybody that I can talk to, because if I turn on the tape and try to write a story off what I see on tape, you're not going to learn anything because I ultimately don't know what I'm looking at. So I talk to people who are actually involved with this. And if you haven't watched them on tape, I don't quote you about the tape. If you haven't spent time with them personally, I don't quote with you on them personally. There was, the story's 12,000 words, about 2,200 of them were on Shedeur. And it's a reality in 2025 that when you post something, regardless of how thorough and well thought out and edited it has been, there's going to be aggregation of it that are going to pop out the one most, extreme thing, whether it's good or bad. And that's what happened here, which was the quote that made the rounds was from an assistant coach who met with Shedeur Sanders, had a formal interview, and said it was the worst formal interview he's ever had in his life. That's his personal experience. And it was not unique. I tell you that, Ross, is, I saw one person said something like, and it's all from one person. Trust me, there's a lot of things that were in the story, good and bad, and there were a lot of things that did not end up in the story for a variety of different reasons. This was far from a unique experience that one person had a bad meeting with Shedeur Sanders. I think that, and this is part of, you see it in politics, you see it across all of, just society right now, which is people can find the version of the news that they want. They can find the version of any piece of news that is going to confirm their pre-existing beliefs. If you want to hear that everybody's great, you don't want to hear from, people about like the negatives on people or don't like this about the person, don't like this about the player. There's an easy way to find that, which is watch the press conferences. Watch press conferences around the league. Everyone will just tell you everybody's great. Everyone should be a first rounder. There's no negatives. Love them. Love the player. Love the person. If you want to have the actual information, then read a story like what I wrote and read the pros and cons on all these guys. Because there were things on Cam Ward and concerns that people have there. Certainly on Jalen Milroe, on Tyler Shuck, on Jackson Dart. It just so happens that Shedeur has this very unique background. In terms of the playing for only his dad, who happens to be one of the greatest athletes of all time, and the differences in accountability structures that you have with that, knowing that as a quarterback, there's no chance you're ever getting benched, knowing that the interactions just naturally, teammates back up Shedeur to a large degree. But just the way that the locker room, the entire culture, it's that culture shock that teams had concerns with Shedeur. And, frankly, they just didn't get the opportunities that they wanted to be able to answer some of those questions. Or if they did, they walked away feeling like they had more questions than they ever did before. And that's where, once Shedeur gets out of the first round, and I thought going into draft day, I thought it was 50-50 that he would go in the first round. Because as much as there were not many teams that were going to do it, the Giants owning both the number 3 pick and potentially trading back in, which they did for a different quarterback. And then the Steelers, those were the 2 spots that, hey, depending on how these last conversations go, it's possible. He didn't go in the first. Well, once you get out of the first, a lot of teams philosophically just aren't going to take a quarterback. Because if you're a GM, you're going, wait, I'm going to draft just a backup in the second, third round, a guy who's not going to help me this year. No, I got to get guys who can help me on the field now. And then as we get to day 3, if there's a name that's popping out, okay, now I'll draft that guy. You think of the number of times the Steelers passed on him, knowing that him and Mike Tomlin had a really good meeting. You think about the number of times the Raiders passed on Shedeur, even though Tom Brady's been a mentor to Shedeur through his process. This was not one coach. This was not one quote. This was just a feeling within the league that while Shedeur Sanders is very accurate, he's very tough. He's just not the biggest guy, not the biggest arm, not an elite athlete, and carries with him all these unknowns about how he's going to adapt into an NFL environment. But to bring it back to the broader point, and again, you see this in all phases of journalism. You see it in all, particularly in politics and matters of world affairs right now. If people choose to believe one version of the facts, the one that fits their pre-existing beliefs, and ignore or say this is fake news, this is nonsense, it's all agendas, when somebody writes the other version of it, then when the thing happens that validates the more negative opinions, we're shocked and it's got to be a conspiracy theory and it's got to be he was blackballed and it was It's like, no, this was all there. I essentially tried to just make everybody aware, hey, like this could go a couple of different directions. Did I think he was going to go to the 5th round? No. But I think that was just further evidence that, this was a player who even beyond just some of the physical limitations just wasn't going to be a fit for everybody. And for any teams that were going to this questioning, hey, maybe he's a fit, there were a lot of people who walked away from talking with him and said, we just can't do it.
Tom, any idea what Rodgers is waiting on at this point? I mean, is he doesn't want to go to OTAs, or is there still really a chance he doesn't play, or is he waiting to see if somehow something happens with maybe the Vikings? Maybe McCarthy looks bad in OTAs. That any insight there, or just any opinion?
I mean, it's tough to have firm insight on Aaron Rodgers because he speaks to so few people. It keeps a lot of these things tight. Now, I know he went on McAfee a few weeks ago. He talked about some of the off the field, the personal things that he's been dealing with. I've known that to be the case. That's real. There's also part of Aaron Rodgers that you're right. He is not, for years, he's not wanted to go and do the off-season stuff. In fact, when he was an NFL Players Association representative during the 2020 collective bargaining talks, he was one of the loudest voice saying we shouldn't have to do anything prior to August 1st. Essentially wipe out the entire spring, OTAs, minicamp, everything, start training camp August 1st, and then go right into the season. That was not, most of the stuff in the spring is voluntary, so that was not a priority for the NFLPA. It did not end up happening, but certainly he's not been a guy who, necessarily thinks it's necessary to be there in the spring. Listen, he's got to make some decisions. He's a 41-year-old man with a lot of things going on in his life right now. He is not, like I said before, I mean, if we're being honest here, he hasn't played at a really high level since 2021. His last year in Green Bay was not his best in 22. 23, obviously the Achilles, and then 24, it was, he played some of the worst football we've ever seen him play. Robert Saleh's final game, I believe, was against the Vikings in London. That's just bad. I've covered Aaron, basically his entire career going back to my days at the Green Bay Press-Gazette. That's the worst I've ever seen him play, just in terms of missing wide open receivers and everything looked late and everything looked skittish. He played better. He showed flashes down the stretch, but I just keep thinking, and again, I don't want to put words in Aaron's mouth because I know how he feels about that. I know that it's hard because he's such a unique guy to fully read it. I just know when I see him on the ground, when he gets hit, it looks like it hurts right now. Every time that he is pulling himself off the turf, it just looks like this hurts. And there had to be times last season. I know there were times last season where he just felt like, it was so enervating to be in the Jets organization. He felt like there were so many things working against him. It really kind of scarred him. And so he's just, reevaluating, is the fire there? Is the spark there? He's done all the research. I mean, he's thrown with DK. He made a last-minute visit to the Steelers facility. Art Rooney has said on multiple occasions now that it seems like he's coming. When exactly that's going to be, I would certainly hope for all of our sake, Ross, that it's before August 18th, which was the date that Brett Favre showed up in 2009 when he ended up with the Vikings. But the Steelers, especially Mike Tomlin, they've decided to be patient here, to give him the time and space that he needs. And, is there going to be a cutoff date? You would think yes, but I would have thought it would have been before the draft, and it didn't happen then, so I'm not sure it will.
Last thing, Tom. Justin Tucker got released by the Ravens on Monday. The Ravens went out of their way to say it was a football decision. Is that a legal thing, Tom, that they don't want to potentially get sued by Tucker, or was it a show of support for a guy that's been such a big part of their success?
I think it's several things, Ross, and I'm not completely aware of the internal deliberations on that. There's one part of them. I mean, listen, they could have cut Justin Tucker immediately back in January. They could have released him like they released Ray Rice. Totally different set of circumstances, but they made that decision very quickly. With Tucker, they stuck with him in part because he's meant so much to the organization and because this is not the Justin Tucker that the people there knew. There is a legal component to this. It doesn't come up often, but by not overtly saying it's because of allegations in a civil suit, number one, you're not setting yourself up that anytime anybody gets sued, you're going to cut them. Number two, you perhaps mitigate the chances of a grievance or a legal situation with Justin Tucker, who was owed $4.2 million non-guaranteed. But in terms of this being a football decision, even just setting aside the other things, remember, Ross, last year, John Harbaugh was answering questions at the podium about, are you going to have to release it? Are you going to have to bring in another kicker? Because Justin Tucker was struggling so much. This is the most accurate kicker in NFL history. He missed 5 kicks under 50 yards last year, including a couple of extra points. That's the most in his career. The body language, everything about it just seemed different. These allegations are, back in 2012 to 2016, you have to wonder to what extent, if at all, was Justin Tucker aware that maybe the walls were closing in on some of these things or that there potentially would be an issue. I don't have the answers to any of that, but when you got a 35-year-old kicker who's due over $4 million coming off his worst season, inevitably you're going to be looking to see, are we going to be able to get an upgrade here? And once they drafted Tyler Loop in the 6th round, I mean, you'd have to go a long way back to find a veteran kicker who beat out a draft pick kicker. It does not happen very often unless the draft pick ends up being terrible. The Ravens took a look at Loop in the rookie minicamp. They moved on from Justin Tucker, and now, even though, again, he's not been charged criminally, he does face 16 allegations of sexual misconduct. The league is continuing to evaluate this. If another team were to sign him, and if the NFL, which usually what they do is they wait until the legal process plays out, but there could be a suspension coming at some point. I don't know that to be the case, but it could be. And also, if the commissioner, and I'm paraphrasing the CBA, but if the commissioner has reason to believe that one of several different crimes may have occurred, they could also use the commissioner's exempt list and keep Justin Tucker off the field. All of which is to say, he is the most accurate field goal kicker in NFL history. He is somebody who, prior to these allegations, was viewed as a pillar in the community and somebody who did a lot of positive things. But there's a very real chance that we've seen the last of Justin Tucker in the NFL. And as much as I'm sure that he would like to get answers and be able to just escalate this, and if there's punishment, serve it and get back, history would suggest that these things can take some time. And if a team decides to sign Justin Tucker in the short term, then the NFL would not necessarily take action, but they're certainly going to scrutinize it and determine what options, if any, they want to employ.
Check him out on social media at Tom Pelissero. Check out the Insiders on NFL Network. He is fantastic. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Ross.
All right, so you already know how I feel about Mother's Day. I'm telling you, maybe the best gift to get them. How about tickets on the Game Time app? People love getting tickets to an event, something to put on their calendar. Just think about how excited your mom will be to go to a game with you or an event, or your wife to go to a concert or a comedy show. My wife loves to laugh. Right now, they got last minute deals where you can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code ROSS, my code, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, so again, create an account and redeem code ROSS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. VODKA, vodka. In particular, Smirnoff, Smirnoff. No idea why I'm spelling these things. I just know that Smirnoff's the world's #1 vodka. It's an official vodka partner of the NFL. It's an official vodka partner of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It's an award-winning vodka. And, you know, I've been drinking Smirnoff a long time. I like that you can craft delicious cocktails without spending a crazy amount. There's no reason to. Grab a bottle of Smirnoff at your local retailer and head to Smirnoff.com to find recipes of delicious cocktails perfect for game day. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 4% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, arguably biggest news from the weekend. The Ravens, they've released their kicker, Justin Tucker.
They went out of their way to say that it was a football decision, talked about it obviously with Tom. The interesting thing would have been if Tucker was still performing as well as he had for years. This would have been a much more difficult decision for the Baltimore Ravens. But he's not, and he's got the outside stuff going on, which made this decision easier than it otherwise would have been.
Matthew Stafford, he gets $44 million this year and $40 million next year if on the roster, so $84 million over 2 years instead of $58 million, which was on the books.
Gonna make this my Labatt take of the week. You don't have to be from Buffalo or a Bills fan to realize that Labatt Blue and Labatt Blue Light are absolutely delicious. By far, my favorite light beer. They actually has flavor and taste. And right now with this buy beer, get gear, it's so easy to go to their website, snap a photo of your receipt, upload it instantly, and you can rack up points for exclusive merch. Just go to rewards.labattusa.com to see all the incredible gear they have. Next thing for me is the cooler backpack. Rewards.labattusa.com. This is a very fair compromise. That said, you rarely see guys do what Matthew Stafford did. I mean, he left at least $10 to $20 million on the table, and more importantly, guaranteed money in year 2. Rather than getting the second year guaranteed with Giants or one of these other teams, he'd rather stay in LA and go year to year. It's rare that guys turn down this much money, this much security. It shows you how much Matthew Stafford wanted to stay in LA, wanted to keep playing with the Rams. I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. By far the best Mother's Day gift. By far. And I will send you a signed autograph in the mail, which is amazing. Myfrontpagestory.com. Just make sure you forward me the receipt after you order it. Myfrontpagestory.com to ross@rosstucker.com. Backofficescheduler.com, humanheadnyc.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing.